During that meeting, there was really no material objections or disagreements or errors identified in our report. Approximately 30 days later, we did receive the responses from Law Sign 11/7/2024, and we issued our report on 11/19/2024. So moving on to the next page. This is a list of the findings, as you can see. I'm not going to go, finding by finding. Robert's going to basically recap some of the more significant ones in the later slides. But we had a total of 16 findings. 10 of those were priority ones, which basically require a little bit more immediate type of corrective action, any type of additional mediation efforts or any other type of compensating controls to alleviate some of those issues. We had 3 priority 2s and we had 3 priority 3s. But one of the most significant one of those was really the lack of documentation for the advances that went out to individuals for working capital for the providers, and Robert will discuss that a little bit shorter. So also here, there's a list of the 16 and the positions that also took associated with the report itself. Moving on to the next page. I'm going to move it over to Robert Campbell. He's going to provide a little bit more information on some of the key findings.
Thank you, Oscar. Good morning, supervisors. Just to give you a recap of some of the more significant findings that we had during our audit. Robert Campbell, Assistant Auditor Controller. The first has to do with working capital cash advances. LASA awarded approximately $50.8 million in Measure H working capital advances to their subrecipients beginning in fiscal year 2017-2018. And one of our findings was that they did not establish formal agreements to determine how and when those funds would be repaid. LASA indicated during our audit that they had initiated efforts to recoup funds beginning in fiscal year 23-24, but some subrecipients cited cash flow issues, and as of the last report we received, only approximately $2.5 million or 5% had been recovered. Our recommendations in this area were for LASA to work with the subrecipients to establish agreements with repayment terms for all the outstanding advances, and to provide the CEO with quarterly updates until all the advance funds were repaid. The next key finding has to do with annual cash advances. We found that LASA did not always recover the annual cash advances that were awarded to subrecipients at the end of the year as required, and as of July 2024 had approximately $8 million in outstanding advances that they had issued to subrecipients carried over as far back as from 2016-17 through 22-23. Of that $8 million, approximately $409,000 was advanced to 6 subrecipients who no longer contract with LASA. Our recommendations in this area were to work with the subrecipients who have overdue outstanding cash advances to recover the funds, to ensure that annual advances in the future are recouped timely, and to consult with their legal counsel about opportunities for recouping the outstanding advances with subrecipients who no longer have a business relationship with LASA. The next finding I'd like to highlight has to do with the absence of contract data and some retroactive contracting issues. During our audit, one of the key pieces of information that we asked for was an inventory of contracts, and LASA could not provide comprehensive contract data such as a list of contracts or execution dates for us to determine the total number of contracts that were executed either timely or retroactively in fiscal year 23-24. We also found examples of contracts that were executed excessively late, and based on our observations, many of those delays were due to issues with LASA's internal contracting processes. Our recommendations in this area include LASA ensuring that key contract information is adequately tracked, reliable, and accurate, to identify the critical delays in the contracting process and implement improvements to enhance the timeliness of their contract execution, and to work with their funders where applicable to identify solutions for funding approval delays to minimize instances of retroactive contracting. The last finding I want to touch on has to do with contract monitoring issues. LASA did not have an adequate contract monitoring plan to ensure effective oversight of subrecipients and the critical services they deliver. Due to a lack of standards for conducting and documenting the results of their contract monitoring reviews, we couldn't determine whether LASA adequately monitored contracts to ensure that subrecipients complied with contract terms. And our recommendations in this area include establishing a standardized risk assessment process that would help inform the development of their annual contract monitoring plan, actively tracking the status of their contract monitoring reviews and measuring performance against their contract monitoring plan at year end, implementing a notification process to ensure that the contract compliance unit is aware when new contracts are executed so they can add them to their plan, ensuring that subrecipients are monitored for all key contract requirements such as programmatic requirements and outcomes, and ensuring that adequate work papers are maintained for all contract monitoring reviews. And as part of that, they could consider using some type of an automated work paper software to promote consistency and efficiency across that process. And then finally, that contract monitoring reviews are properly supervised and that they retain evidence and documentation of that supervision. That concludes our overview of the audit, and we're available to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for that. And I do want to respond because on some of this, it to me is very black and white, and that is, like, for example, did not establish agreements for working capital advances, and LASA disagrees, but either you have the forms or you don't. So I'd like to know where the disagreement is on that, because that one seems to me to be either you have it or you don't, and if you can't provide it, then you're not doing it. So I just would like to get a response from you all. And not just that one. I mean, there are other ones that you disagree. Inappropriate use of funds, again, is one that if you can show on the balance sheet that it's being properly monitored, then it would be easy to show that documentation.
Janine Trejo, CFO for LASA. We agree with the spirit of the audit, and LASA did request the audit so that this way we could understand really what the shortfalls were and where improvements needed to be made. And with the particular item that you're referencing, we do agree with the fact that there were not agreements in place initially by LASA. In between December of 2023 and January of 2024, letters were sent to all of the service providers outlining the amount that they had owed for the working capital and the repayment schedules. So that was the only item that we were trying to identify, was that subsequently that items had been established and put in place to start the recoupments with the service providers.
So you really don't disagree, but so it would be you agree with the finding, but you've made changes.
Correct.
Okay, because disagree sounds like you all don't feel that that's an accurate reflection in the audit, but in fact, you would agree that the audit did show that, but that's something that you've corrected, and that's, I think, what you referred to, Dr. Adams-Kellum, when you respond. It's like there are things that we have fixed that have been found in the audit. So I guess on that one, it would be more agree, but has been rectified or has been addressed.
Correct.
And then as it relates to, I mean, when I hear the funds, and let me just say, this motion is report back because I want to make sure that, you know, obviously this came out of the Blue Ribbon Commission on homelessness that we put together, Supervisor Solis and I, in response to frustrations that some cities had about not being able to access Measure H. And these were the findings at that time as it relates to changes that were recommended. But I want to find out if there are unintended consequences moving forward, and that's why we've got a short turnaround. But we want to find out if LASA, as it was created to be a COC for both the City of LA and the county, is the best charge for them right now. And I don't know the answer. I'm looking forward to the report back to make that analysis. But make no mistake, this board collects the Measure A now, what was Measure H. So it's not really on LASA, it's not even on the City of LA, it's on this board to be responsible and really oversight as it relates to where the money's going. And so, I've said this and people have asked me, the days of blaming LAHSA or the city have come to an end. This board is responsible. And that's why we're looking at creating a homeless department, because maybe it's time for us to stand up something that will be a oversight, not only for LAHSA, but also within our own departments moving forward. So I want to make that clear. This is not a blame game, because the buck stops right here at this board. We are the ones that are ultimately held responsible for the Measure A dollars that are coming in and the Measure H that have been coming in. But I just want to make sure that moving forward, there were issues as it relates to our providers saying that we weren't paying in a timely fashion. And they were having to take out lines of credit, which have high interest rates, which then takes money away from where the services should be going, and that is, the money should be going, and that is to services. So we rectified that. So no good deed goes unpunished, because we put the money out there, but at the same time, it sounds like we didn't have proper mechanisms in place to ensure that the invoices were coming in to accurately reflect the money that was being paid out. Unintended consequence of a good action that was necessary for our providers. I believe that this is a roadmap moving forward, and I think it's important for us to fully vet where you disagree, because it sounds to me like you don't necessarily disagree. You disagree moving forward, but you recognize the errors of the past. Correct? I, for one, am looking forward to the report. I want to work with you. I want to work to make sure that we give you all the tools to succeed, but at the same time that we are being responsible for the funding that is going out, because the accountability is going to be on this board. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Before we continue with discussion, I just want to make sure we get the information on Measure A as well. So I'm going to turn it to our CEO for that presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have a PowerPoint, if you can bring the PowerPoint up. And we have with us today Sheree Todoroff, who will give the details on Measure A.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm Sheree Todoroff, the Executive Director of the LA County Homeless Initiative, and I'm going to do an update on Measure A this morning. Actually, I'm going to go back. So I want to begin by providing some brief background on the recently passed Measure A, also known as the Affordable Housing, Homeless Solutions, and Prevention Now Transactions and Use Tax Ordinance, which is an initiative passed by a majority of the voters in LA County on November 5th. The ordinance will impose a 0.5-cent sales tax countywide to fund county homeless services and the LA County Affordable Housing Solutions Agency, also known as La Casa, and also referred to in the ordinance as the Housing Agency. The Measure A tax will begin on April 1st, 2025. The tax will repeal and replace Measure H, which is the existing 1/4-cent sales tax in the county, which had been set to expire in 2027. As shown on this slide, there are 5 outcome goals that are codified within Measure A, which include increase the number of people moving from encampments into permanent housing to reduce unsheltered homelessness, reduce the number of people with mental illness and/or substance use disorders who experience homelessness, increase the number of people permanently leaving homelessness, prevent people from falling into homelessness, and increase the number of affordable housing units in Los Angeles County. This slide shows the breakdown of Measure A allocations to each entity as specified in the ordinance. The tax is estimated to generate approximately $1.07 billion in revenue in fiscal year 25-26. Of that total estimated revenue, 0.5% is allowed for cost associated with collection and distribution of the tax itself. So that is at approximately $5.4 million listed on this table. The remaining revenue is split into 4 categories. The first is comprehensive homeless services, which makes up 60% of the remaining revenue, or about $642 million annually. And it will be directly administered by the county. Within this comprehensive homeless solutions category, there are 3 subcategories. The first subcategory is the Local Solutions Fund of just over $96 million, which will allocate funds to cities, councils of government, and unincorporated areas for programs including homeless prevention and services or affordable housing programs. Approximately $60 million of this annually is estimated to be going to the City of Los Angeles. The ordinance specifies that these funds should be distributed via a formula based on the point in time count and or similar measures of people experiencing homelessness as the board determines in consultation with cities and with the county. We will be providing your offices with some options to consider for the distribution and allocation of the Local Solutions Fund in the next couple of weeks. At least 1.65% of the funds, or about $10.6 million, will be allocated to homelessness solutions innovations to fund new or enhanced strategies and demonstration projects. Again, these funds are administered directly by the county. The third subcategory and the remaining funding in this category is the Comprehensive Homeless Services subcategory of approximately $535 million, which will be allocated to provide a continuum of services to people experiencing homelessness, including outreach, interim housing, permanent housing, and a range of supportive services. This is what we are currently managing. This is most closely aligned to what is currently being funded with Measure H, this category is. For awareness, because of the distribution mechanism, this is a bit less funding than what the Measure H revenue is this fiscal year for this particular category. All right, next we'll go to the next category, or number 2 here on the slide. 1.25%, or approximately $13.4 million, will go to the county to administer for accountability, data, and research to promote accountability, oversight, universal data, outcome evaluation, and to expand capacity for data collection and reporting by the funding recipients, contractors, and service providers. Next, number 3, we will go to funding that will be administered by the LA County Development Authority, LACDA. This is for local housing production. It is 3% of the funds, approximately just over $32 million. And this is for the development or preservation of housing in which the housing units are affordable to lower income households. And then last, in the allocation formula, we have 35.75%, or just under $383 million, which will go to La Casa and will fund housing and will include funding for things like the construction of new affordable housing preservation, tenant protection and support programs, and planning and technical assistance related to affordable housing and land use. This slide contains the county's role and new responsibilities with regard to the implementation and oversight of Measure H. I am not going to go over all of these. I will highlight a couple. The county is responsible for collecting and distributing the tax, for directly administering all components of the Comprehensive Homelessness Services funding and the accountability, data, and research funding, for evaluating and adopting a regional plan no later than April 1st, 2025, to establish and manage an annual evaluation agenda, to establish a labor council by June 30th, 2025, which will make recommendation to the board on compensation, wages and benefits, and appropriate pay ranges, as well as the allowance of cost of living adjustments, and also conduct an annual audit of receipts and expenditures that is made available publicly and that is transparent. Next, we will talk for a minute about the Executive Committee and Regional Table for Regional Homeless Alignment. Executive Committee and Leadership Table for Regional Homeless Alignment. These were established through a motion adopted by your board on August 8th, 2023, based on recommendations from the Blue Ribbon Commission on Homelessness. That motion directed the Chief Executive Office to establish the Executive Committee of elected officials to develop one plan to address homelessness, to establish a common set of performance indicators, to align resources, and to provide oversight. It also directed the CEO to partner with philanthropy to establish the leadership table to act as an advisory body supporting the work of the Executive Committee. As it relates to Measure A, the Executive Committee is responsible for evaluating progress toward goals with an emphasis on goals 1, 2, and 3. La Casa will be focusing on goals 4 and 5 as they are related to housing and prevention. The Executive Committee is also responsible for formulating baseline and target metrics no later than April 1, 2025, making recommendations to the county on the regional plan, developing best practices for standardization of care, overseeing and making recommendations regarding the expenditure of funds allocated to the county and LACDA, and making recommendations to the board and La Casa to redirect funds or to or away from specific programs for which target metrics have not been achieved by December 31st, 2030. In addition, the Executive Committee is responsible for formulating new baseline and target metrics informed by annual evaluations and program performance no later than October 1, 2031, and evaluating progress toward these new metrics at least every 5 years thereafter and making recommendations to the board and La Casa. And we will finish up with the leadership table. The leadership table for regional homeless alignment as it relates to Measure A is responsible for providing input to the Executive Committee and La Casa on baseline and target metrics, providing input to the Executive Committee on best practices for standardization of care, and providing input to the Executive Committee regarding the expenditure of funds allocated to the county and LACDA. And that concludes my presentation.
Did you have any other questions for that, Supervisor Barger?
No, not at this point. I'll let my colleagues speak.
Okay, Supervisor Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First of all, with regard to Measure A, I want to acknowledge, having seen this presentation and heard many others, the life-changing impact it will have on the residents of the district I have the privilege of representing. And for those reasons, it was my priority this election cycle, and I'm thrilled, even after doing the deep dive in terms of the second district residents' voting patterns. I'm glad they got the assignment and understood. Also, the life-changing impact it will have on their and our family, friends, and neighbors. I'm deeply proud that Measure A was goals-centered versus time-limited, and that it's specific, it's transparent, and again, will change lives. So congratulations to all those who did all the work from the ground up. The process by which it was crafted, I think, is a reflection of why it was passed and the nature of the measure. Having served and continue to serve actively on La Casa, but as the chair for its first year, very proud that the county will have an ongoing funding source for the construction and the protection of affordable housing. That is a huge deal for which all of us should really be deeply proud. But again, I want to tip my hat to the voters. You got that right, without question. Thank you to the presenters. I want to shift now to the audit piece, if I may. I've got a few questions for both the auditor controller and for the chief executive office. I'm clear that audits are an essential part of managing any organization. And ironically, colleagues, as I listened to this report, so many of its elements sounded very familiar, like to the forensic audit that the county got recently on our own contracting process. So apparently everybody has work to do to improve how we manage contracts. Perhaps LASA, the county as well. Many of those elements we heard in terms of our own lacking. And I think it's really important to make sure that particularly the public has an accurate understanding of both the purpose of the audit and what it's actually calling attention to. I know we've got members of the press here today and the public, and I want to make sure that and they, you know, audits are unique. Auditors are special people to be able to drill down at a point in time and come up with all those things, and it's not something many of us do on a daily basis. And so I want to make sure people walk away with an accurate understanding of what was identified, because I'm concerned, based on how some of the information is being presented, that it's leading to a mischaracterization of our service providers as a whole, and I think that's unfortunate. The audit is on LASA, though the majority of the funds are passed through to actual service providers. So with that, to the auditor controller, the audit reviewed LASA's operating controls and processes. Is that correct?
The audit itself was basically services from LASA to the third-party providers, not the interaction between LA County to LASA.
Oh, I'm clear. So that's what I said. It reviewed LASA's operating controls and processes to providers, not to us, but that's what you reviewed.
Correct.
So did the audit review whether the funds were actually used for homeless services, either by LASA or by the providers? Is that what your audit reviewed?
Robert, I'll defer that one to you.
No, we did not. We did not review that.
So the audit results is not saying that funds were used for, you're not saying that that funds were not used for homeless services. Sorry for that double negative, but you follow me?
Correct, Supervisor. We did not examine whether any particular expenditure was used for its intended purpose or not. We were looking at the business processes and controls at LASA and how those support management's decision.
Thank you for that. And I raise these questions because it has already been reported and suggested, and I've heard from the public who are concerned about whether their understanding of the audit and the process was that the funds were inappropriately used. So I wanted to get that on the record, that that is not what this audit focused on. And my understanding from service providers is that the initial working capital advances were given to both providers and LASA, so the homeless response system could scale up quickly and establish needed infrastructure after the passage of Measure H in 2017. And the capital was considered deferred revenue with no expectation of repayment until the end of Measure H. That explains the absence of a repayment plan or schedule required by LASA or the county. So can you explain how the advances work and the findings in the audit about organizations needing to repay advances?
Robert, I don't know if you want to
Sure.
jump on this one.
Well, your characterization of the working capital advances is correct. Our observation primarily was that with any disbursement of public funds, including an advance that, in this case, we didn't prescribe or require a particular repayment term. We noted that there was the absence of an agreement, the absence of a written document formally memorializing those disbursements and providing for the benefit both of the providers and LASA the eventual terms of that repayment. That was what was missing, and we believe that that's critical both to support the needs of the providers and LASA as it
Reconcile and or recoup all advances by the end of the fiscal year, which again contemplates that there would be some sort of repayment. So that's the what. In terms of the how, I agree that there is not clear documentation that said this is exactly how this would happen, but I do think that there was an expectation that it would happen. And to the extent that we are sending Measure H funding through LASA directly to the providers, then that's where LASA would play their role to start that recoupment process so that then funds could be, accounted for with the county. So I think my two overarching points is it was in advance. And I don't think there was ever an expectation that it would never be recouped. And then secondly, it does talk about doing this reconciliation every fiscal year.
I appreciate that clarification and the acknowledgement of basic accounting principles. So how did we get here from 2017 to 2024? Is this the first audit for LASA of Measure H dollars? No. So how did we get here that this is just coming to fruition now, all these years later? If the expectation was that it would be every fiscal year, and if it were following basic accounting principles, how did we get here to 2024 and it's just being elevated?
Well, what I would say to that supervisor is, it's not that this is something new in terms of our understanding of what was happening. The second thing I would point out is that most of the people on that dais, or on this dais, were not involved in the early years of implementation when Measure H was passed. And I think if you look at the prior audits of LASA, even prior to the current administration, there were constant challenges and findings related to contracting and cash flow. And so my assessment is that there wasn't necessarily a thought that we would waive the requirement, but that there were other things that kept getting in a way that required more urgent attention, which has been called out, I think, multiple times in prior audits.
So as we think about just what it will take, what would it take for the county to ensure that every receipt is submitted by every service provider, that LASA, or for that matter, every county department is following up and tracking according to the requirements of each funding source? That, having been a nonprofit leader with a very large county contract, I know what the county required of me in managing my child care stage 1 contract, and what the state required of me, and what the federal government required of me. And what was maddening was they were all different requirements, but it was accountability. Yeah. And so in this case, what would that take?
Yeah. So I think one of our tendencies, and when we find ourselves in a situation, et cetera, one of the things that we've done, and I'll ask Cherie to talk to this, is when the board directed us to change and front load.
This was out. When I think back in retrospect, that's why Supervisor Barger and I put forward the Blue Ribbon Commission, because we wanted to take a look at where the gaps were. So for me, that's where this starts, and trying to rectify that. And I don't hold all our providers at fault, but I do agree that I do have some questions with respect to continuance of funds to maybe sub, as you outlined it here, some of the sub recipients that were still receiving monies and don't have a contract with us. Can you explain that to me, please?
And I would say, and I can ask staff to jump in, but for clarification, it's subrecipients or contractors that are no longer doing business with LASA that have unrecouped advances. So it's not that they're still receiving ongoing payments.
But we're trying to claw back that money.
Heather Jeffrey Ho with the Auditor Controller. It's that they received advances in the past when the providers did have contracts with LASA, but LASA did not recoup those advances before the contract ended.
So are those sub-recipients or folks in any way still involved with providing services in the county through our county contracting?
It's possible, but we do not have an answer to that.
I would like to get information on that. And that way we can avoid this from happening again. I don't put everything on LASA, but I do think that we also have a responsibility to make sure that those practices are not continued. Obviously, when we know there's a bad actor, we either put them on a list and say we're not going to contract with you, or you're on you're on a program that you're going to have to rectify yourself before you come back in. So I would like to know that. I also want to say that there are some of our providers who really believed that they did not have to pay back this fund monies that they were advanced until the end of Measure H. And that, as Supervisor Mitchell Reyes, that's what I've heard, not from all of our providers, but certainly from most. And I wanna ask the controller, then how do we make sure that from the get-go that does not happen, even with the new money coming in for Measure A? And we've heard a little bit of what Sherry Turgeroff has said, but my sense is that this has to be somehow codified in some manner.
And I think it's definitely developing the upfront process beforehand. Again, if it's going to be in the operational agreement, providing additional detail to the contractors or to LASA. Same thing from LASA to contractors, what the requirements are going to be. I know with the expectation of new revenue streams coming in, I know there's going to be an oversight. So I think it's really going to be communication to those providers and making sure that things are baked into any future type of agreement with LASA or the contractors. I'll defer also to Robert for any additional comments.
Supervisor, thank you. I would just add that the observation, the recommendation that we had surrounding the lack of agreements memorializing the advances and the terms of them, I think speaks directly to your question. Those would have been the ideal vehicle to communicate expectations and to clarify when and the manner under which those advances would be recouped. And in the absence of those, it provided a lack of clarity to everyone, LASA and the providers, on that point.
And does LASA concur with that?
I agree, because there was nothing established between, in the operational agreement that LASA has with the county as to the working capital and how that was going to be repaid and the length and the time span for that. And in turn, LASA did not put that in.
Discharge our obligation to be good stewards of public dollars. So that's one part, is the process, the paper process. I think another part of the process is then the negotiations. And so there might be, I'll just take insurance, for example. There might be an insurance requirement in the contract, in the proposed contract. The county and that provider, that vendor for services, we might go back and forth in a negotiation. And so I think there's two parts to this equation. One is, how is the process designed to work? Is efficiency built into it? But even if you have an efficient process and you have a vendor that wants to negotiate, that negotiation can happen over time or it can happen very quickly. So I think there's two pieces to it, but that doesn't mean that we can't do better.
So take the federal and state out of it. I know the Weingart Foundation put together something and identified the fact that if you've got a contract with 4 different departments, each one has their own style of monitoring. And can't we blend that monitoring together, because the overall fundamental umbrella of the county in terms of requirements is in place? Where are we on that? Has that been done? If I ask providers who have 3 different contracts with 3 departments, are we streamlining it so that it makes it user-friendly for them, even take out the state and federal?
Right. Not that I'm aware of. The effort that I recall was an effort regarding indirect cost rates. And what we wanted to do was standardize the indirect cost rates regardless of whether a provider had a contract with 1 department or 4. There was a lot of work done on that effort, but it was never actually implemented and brought to scale countywide.
So I would ask, because I do remember that being one part, but I also remember talking to providers, and you were once in this position, where mental health may have a different set of standards that need to be monitored, and they had to hire individuals to do it when it could be streamlined and addressed with 1 monitor. So I would ask that we revisit that, and I'll try to pull up my paperwork, because I remember that being discussed at the board, and I thought it made sense. And if we can't do it, we are the county, and we are the oversight as relates to all these departments. Why can't we work to have that process streamlined? Because that's a cost. I think you said it. It's expensive to not only respond to an RFP, but also to comply with the requirements when you get a contract.
So we will follow up, Supervisor, and we can brief your offices, and then if desired, we do a report back at a public, at a future board meeting.
And then in closing, I'll just say that I can't remember who said it, but the JPA was set up for the city of Los Angeles and the county of Los Angeles, which is now LASA. Never envisioned was it to have this huge influx of dollars. That has been why we did the Blue Ribbon Commission, because it is city-centric, because that's how it was set up. It's not a criticism at all. That's how it was set up. And I know that we have put people on that commission that represent different parts of the county in order to address the fact that some feel that they don't have a voice. I know the representatives that we put on are not City of LA centric. So I feel that this board has addressed that to the best of our ability to ensure that there is more than just City of LA voice. But the City of LA sued the county, and this was part of the settlement, a JPA. This was in 86, 87? And so this was a settlement. So this JPA was created to address kind of some of the issues that were going on prior to Mayor Bass getting on board, and that is the city didn't feel they were getting their fair share, and how can we do it better, and da-da-da-da. I mean, I could go on and on, history repeating itself. But I just wanted to make it clear that this board has addressed the issue of representation on LASA by ensuring that representatives do reflect all parts of the county. And I just wanted to get that on the record as well. But thank you for being here. I know that you've got to...
Because again, I'm very aware of what exactly is coming back to us. And you said we'll see the pros and cons. And I sort of didn't hear that in the litany that Supervisor Horvath, you were describing what's going to... It sounded more like it was a fait accompli. It was like, this is how we're going to transfer things from LASA to our department. This is how we're going to offer jobs to people from... So it sounded very much like it was a done deal. So I picked up on what you said. And so I guess this would be to Fisha and Cherie, when you're putting this report together, will there be something that would be, how would a county department be better for the providers? How would a county department work better for contracting? How would in other words, so we could really, I mean, one part is certainly the feasibility, and if we choose to do that, you're going to lay out the framework on how it works. But is there a section, because sometimes we don't get those pros and cons in report backs. It's almost like it's it's a neutral feeling. So I would like, I mean, I think for me, I'm going to want to know, how would this department, fix what's broken? How would this department ultimately put our providers front and center, put obviously the people on the streets front and center? How would this do a better job of solving this crisis, which I think we all want to do, because it's clear, and I said all that to say, nobody likes the status quo right now, right? It's just not working like I think the public wants it to, nor is it working like we want it to. But again, I hope that report gives us, I want to take the final vote with my eyes wide open on what exactly that this would mean.
Is that a statement or a question?
Both.
So in response to the question, what we had initially contemplated is what we do in all similar motions, where we would, if the board is making the policy decision that we want to move in this direction, that's the what, and then we would come in with the how. I do think that there is room for us to provide in the report back, since we know what some of the known issues are, if we see challenges in terms of what we're thinking about in terms of implementation, in sort of not repeating the current state, if that makes sense. So we would not in the report specifically say, unless we thought it was not feasible because of cost or because of some legal prohibition. But on the policy question, I feel like the question on the table is, how can this happen? We would issue a plan that says, here's how it can happen. And based on the known issues that we're trying to address, here is what we need to be mindful of in terms of the design and the development, so that we don't replicate.
So you're looking at the vote today. If we voted to approve this report back, that this would be sort of a policy decision that we're saying, yes, we want to go in this direction. Because is that what you're saying?
Yes, so my report back is not whether the board should do it, because I feel like in some ways I'm being told, figure out how to do it. I would come back with a how, and then in the how, we would try to, in the time frame that we have, explain how this new design of a new department would address, we could include some of the things that were called out in the audit. We have started to think about things like that. For example, we talked earlier about how Housing for Health has a streamlined, probably sort of unique within the county, a streamlined contracting process. How we would bring that to bear in this new department. That is something that we could call out.
Again, you know, that's always kind of been my rub a little bit sometimes with our report back, because I would be open to report back, but I really want then to see whether we think this is a good idea or not, and then take another vote on yes. But it sounds like you're assuming that we are asking you to create this new department.
Well, the question is whether it's feasible. And so my report back will say either yes, this is feasible, or no, it's not feasible. And then I would explain why, whichever, you know, wherever we landed on that. And then I think the other thing that we can add is we understand that contracting and timelines for contracting is an issue. Here are some things that we need to be mindful of in the development of this new department, not to replicate that.
And again, for me, I would like in this report back, how is this better for, you know, our providers? How is this better for solving this homeless crisis? How would this, instead of just the feasibility, whether or not I want to continue to go down?
I think we can, yes, it makes sense, and that's.
Phone, you may begin. Hello? Yes, I meant to speak on another item. I don't need to speak on that, that's why.
Okay, we'll go to the next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Theodora Reyes. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Senator, can make that Javard to do public comment. Can you all hear me? Just to make sure. We can, go ahead. Thank you. The Senator, through various positions, has had the opportunity to work alongside LASA and has witnessed firsthand our homeless operations in the county. She strongly supports a system that overhauls the status quo. As we've seen from reports, it is not working. This department aims to streamline efforts, cut through red tape, and dismantle bureaucratic inefficiencies that often hinder timely and effective action on this critical issue, which she fully supports. To make sure that it's also incorporated and too often taxpayer dollars meant from urgent services are tied up in administrative processes are allocated inefficiently, failing to make the intended impact on the ground. The Senator believes that creating a centralized department will foster greater transparency, ensure that resources are used efficiently and effectively, improve outcomes for health individuals. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Tanisha Saunders. Your line is open. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin. Tanisha Saunders, your line's open. If you're muted, please unmute.
Commissioner Saunders, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much. So I really appreciate the great, robust conversation that has been had today. And I'd like to share my comments as a LASA commissioner and, as someone who works in direct service, working in the system today, I urge the board to fix our system rather than dismantling it. We've seen communities across the nation who have successfully addressed homelessness through a unified approach. And I think that the recent efforts made by the city and county have produced success for the first time in years. But the city or even the county going in their own individual directions and their own departments would be taking a huge step backward as people continue to see.
Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Katie Hill. Your line is open. If you're muted,
Supervisors. This is specifically related to item 5. I appreciate that many of you already understand this, but I want to reiterate that focusing on repayment of working capital by providers is problematic. It is important to understand what providers are truly floating on behalf of the government entities that fund LAHSA, including the county, and the notion of requiring any repayment at this moment is not only misguided, but absolutely dangerous to the fragile infrastructure of our system of care. The organization for which I'm the incoming CEO, Union Station, has $26 million annually in contracts from LAHSA. We've received approximately $4 million in advances between working capital at the beginning of Measure H and current annual advances and prepayments. However, we have $2.2 million in outstanding accounts receivable from LAHSA through October, an additional $1.8 million we can't even bill yet because of contracting delays or other constraints in EDMS, and we've already paid out $1.6 million on LAHSA contracts just in November that we will not have for at least another 60 days based on billing timelines and historic trends. So the outlay of funds at any given point in time is substantially higher than the combined advances, requiring us to borrow from a line of credit and spend private dollars on interest. In order to recoup advances from the system, services literally need to be halted. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Eric Preven. Your line is open. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Thank you. It's Eric Preven, and what can I say? This is, I'd like to thank staff, first of all, and certainly County Council gets a lot of the credit for these screwed up contracts and the variable contracts. Whether to do it now or how to do it, I think you need to vote on it again probably because it's confusing. And I think we should make sure that there's mental health availability for staff and for the supervisors as well, because this is really yet another series of recommendations and enormous confusion for those of us out in the public. We want it to be streamlined. If this is the process, that's wonderful. We're a little concerned that Supervisor Horvath, who's being, hands-on right up front, is going to stick herself in as the elected CEO, because why couldn't the current CEO be coordinating a county department? That's kind of what a CEO does in the real world. So hopefully Davenport will get access, if necessary, to the mental health. Let's make sure that this doesn't turn into Measure H was Mark Ridley Thomas's baby, and he was who said push all the money out the door quickly.
Thank you. Your term is expired. Speaker, please.
Our next participant is Nikki Perez. Your line is open. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin. They've removed themselves from queue. Our next participant now is Marcel Roderde. Your line is opening. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Good morning, or good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm Marcel Roderde, Executive Director of the California Contract Cities Association. I was also a member of the Burge and wholeheartedly support the recommendations made by the Burge, including accountability, process improvements, and making adjustments to how we address homelessness in LA County. It's imperative the residents of LA County are given assurance their taxpayer dollars are being used efficiently and effectively to positively impact the reduction of homelessness throughout the county. The passage of Measure A was a testament to those expectations. Our members applaud the board for keeping your promise to make changes where needed to improve the way services and programming are funded. The Burge recommendations were the result of 100 hours of work to identify areas in need of attention and improvement. The unanimous decision was that we cannot keep doing things the same way and expect improved results. On behalf of our 80-member cities and nearly 8 million residents, I strongly encourage an aye vote on items 5 and 21 today. I look forward to continuing this important work with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Roy Humphreys. Line is open. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
LAHSA was born in 1993, and here we are, 2024, with this grand expose abomination. Yes, we need new jails a la Sheriff Arpaio in Barger land to house those responsible for this criminal enterprise, which explains the LAHSA arrogance in clearing the Rowland Heights Stater Brothers transients. I tried to get Rowland Heights residents to engage this board, which is probably ill-advised considering the rioting that might result after waking the living dead. This measure, it's better late than never. And thank God for the election of Donald J. Trump, who is going to bring pride and justice back to this country, state, and county. And we need Elon to stay in California and get us out of this muck and mire that we're embroiled in. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Ruth Robles. Your line is open. If you're muted, please
recommendations. This board, this Blue Ribbon Commission, had 8 seats, I believe, and one of them was held by a Gibson Dunn attorney named Deanne Evangelis, the woman who literally stood in front of the Supreme Court recently representing Grants Pass, Oregon, and argued successfully that unhoused people do not deserve civil rights, such as the right to sleep in public. LASA was created, yes, in the 90s as a result of welfare lawsuits in the 80s. So basically, LASA was created as an alternative to directly aiding people with things like general relief or what they now call UBI and stuff. If we actually got direct help, we could just help ourselves. There would be no need to do an audit later.
Our next participant is Anna Lee. Your line is open. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
The first problem was not recognizing that housing alone will not address what is going on in the streets. Please advocate to the state and federal government for more inpatient psychiatric facilities. Now, regarding this discussion, are you telling me that the homeless industrial complex will not take advantage of the lack of accountability by the county? What? I don't know what is worse, the taking advantage or the county failing to foresee the unintended consequences. Supervisors, please be clear that your experience regarding contacting LASA cannot be compared to that of the general public. Next time, identify yourself as Joe Public and then compare the responsiveness. Thank you.
Structure, I urge us to continue to focus on the actual work and centering our service providers and folks experiencing homelessness in our decision. So I actually, Supervisor Hahn made 2 good points that were also my points, that we need to really make sure we are underscoring in this findings report what is going to impact our service providers and our actual metrics. Also, that we spend a little more time on the report. And the last thing is that we make sure that the report is based on actual administrative overhead of 10 to 15% and not what LASA is currently using, which is around 5. Thank you. We can do this together.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, Supervisors. Mayor John Ericson from the City of West Hollywood. Normally on a Friday, I should be preparing to see Wicked, which I've seen twice. However, I found myself reading the audit report for LASA at a local coffee shop and was aghast. Not only aghast by the failure of, I think, systematic things that have been set up to help people, but a failure of, I think, all of us. And it's so great to see the robust discussion here by everyone that deeply cares about this issue to try to find a pathway forward. I would also invite LASA to actually engage the 87 other cities throughout the county. I was trying to text our city manager while I was waiting here to say, has LASA ever come to West Hollywood to find out the $5 to $10 million we take out of our annual budget to help recoup and do the work that they should or would be doing? And the answer was a no. And so I invite that conversation. I want to thank everyone up here for the work that you're doing for this issue. And it's really great to see the collaborative effort being put forth for our cities. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Yes, my name is Paige Kalojatovich. I am Mayor Pro Tem in Redondo Beach. I serve representing the Southwest cities on the ECRA committee. I'm here to speak in favor of this motion today. It's an interesting situation. This is a true emergency affecting tens of thousands of residents in LA County, but it's not treated like an emergency. It's one of very few. So this recommendation was made 2.5 years ago to create a central entity for homelessness, and we're just now getting to those recommendations. So I urge you to act with urgency. And it's important that cities, as a gentleman before me spoke, are represented in this new entity. If the same people making the same decisions are making up this new team, we should expect the same outcomes. And I don't think that's what we're looking for today. I will say that the central entity system does work. We've used it in Redondo Beach. We've reached functional zero in homelessness by taking the less traditional path and addressing homelessness. And it can be done anywhere and everywhere in LA County. So let's act with urgency, prioritize meaningful data, and implement these recommendations from the Blue Ribbon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Darrell Hicks. I am the Civic Engagement Coordinator with Wesley Health Centers. here on behalf of my organization. We understand and recognize the need for solutions to the city's and the county's homelessness problem and are in full support of Bill 21 and its purposes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, I'm Brittany Wiseman. I run Hollywood Forward, the homeless hub in Greater Hollywood, and thank Supervisors Horvath and Barger for this motion, which we endorse in Hollywood. We know the crisis today requires our strategic thinking and strategic management. There are so many brilliant people and vast sums of money working disjointedly in LA County at this point. And we know in Hollywood, at Hollywood Forward, that intelligently coordinating the staff, the funds, the services with an eye on outcomes is really key to achieving functional zero on homelessness. But this new department is not immune, like other county departments, is not immune to the red tape and payment delays and inside the box thinking limitations. And so we'll have to make good on the promise that we've devoted to the county taxpayers through Measure A and other sorts of funding to make sure this new county entity is proving good and making good on our confidence. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Christian Hewling, delivering remarks on behalf of SEIU Local 721 President David Green and over 100,000 represented Los Angeles County workers, including those of LAHSA. 721 has historically collaborated with both the county and the city of Los Angeles to ensure transparency, continuity of services, creating standards that serve the common good of the communities we serve and the members we represent under LAHSA. While we understand the urgent calls for reform and streamlining of homeless services provided by LAHSA, it is our sincere hope that this board thoroughly assess the proposed transition of these functions to a direct county-operated agency. As we embark on the implementation of 2 voter-approved measures addressing the crisis of the unhoused and equitable representation in government, the leadership of SEIU 721 continues to advocate for our membership to be meaningfully included in the discussion and the outcome as prescribed by this board today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, honorable board members. My name is Grace Weltman, and I represent the South Bay Coalition and Homelessness. We have providers, we have cities, we have faith-based organizations, health care agencies, a broad base of members. And we are actually in support of exploring this motion. Prior to the passage, many members expressed reservations about Measure A because of accountability issues and transparency issues. So we feel that this motion will give the voters maybe what they need to hear before moving forward on what we could. And we look forward to what we could do. We look forward to partnering with you. And I want to say, please, please do substantial community engagement and getting input from the community and the providers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Kathlyn Rawson. I'm president and CEO of the Hollywood Partnership. We run a small Hollywood Partnership Community Dispatch Center in the core of Hollywood, and we are the recipients of a small amount of county funds that help us do the work. We coordinate with the neighborhood. With
Item 21 is before us. I will move it, seconded by Supervisor Barger, to approve the item. Executive Officer, please call the roll.
Supervisor Solis?
Aye.
Supervisor Solis? Aye. Supervisor Mitchell?
Abstain.
Supervisor Mitchell, abstain. Supervisor Hahn? Supervisor Hahn, aye.
Aye.
Supervisor Barger?
Aye.
Supervisor Barger, aye. Supervisor Horvath?
Aye.
Supervisor Horvath? Aye. Motion carries, 4 ayes, 1 abstention.
Thank you. We'll now move on. There was a request to move up item 8. So we are moving to item 8, increasing support for Los Angeles County immigrants, which was held by Supervisor Solis. For members of the public on the telephone, please press 1 then 0 now to comment on this item. Supervisor Solis, I'll turn it to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I would like to personally thank Supervisor Hahn for agreeing to co-author the motion with me. This is regarding increasing support for Los Angeles County immigrants. And I also want to thank our staff at OIA and Rafael, Rigo, and Dan, and all those that have worked in the past few years to support our immigrants here in Los Angeles County. And lastly, I would also like to acknowledge all those here that are in support of the motion and those that are on the line or watching us today. Lastly, I want to thank all of us for standing up for your dedication and forthright ability to see how important our immigrant communities are to the County of Los Angeles. Colleagues, I'm bringing this motion to you today because we know that in the coming months, it's going to become more difficult for many of our friends and our neighbors. Immigrants, as we all know, are the backbone of LA County. On every corner, you see the contributions of immigrants from around the world. In Los Angeles County, immigrants contribute significantly to nearly all aspects of our county life, including spending over $108.6 billion per year and contributing over $38 billion in state, local, and federal taxes. The president-elect has made no secret of his plans for immigration policy, including mass deportations, creating a deep sense of fear and instability, not only among undocumented residents, but also for those who have less than citizenship status and mixed immigration status households. Considering that nearly 60% of children born in Los Angeles County have at least one parent who is an immigrant, mass deportations could greatly disrupt our families and uproot individuals from communities that have not been apart for years. And let's not forget that many undocumented residents have family members who are also U.S. citizens by birth, including children whom they rely on for support. We've seen this picture before, members. We've seen this playbook, and we know what the consequences can be. But more importantly, we also know how to respond to best support our immigrant communities. Back in 2017, not too long ago, in response to then President Trump's immigration policies, I authored a motion to create the Office of Immigrant Affairs, OIA, in the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs to support our county's immigrant communities. And over the past year, OIA has channeled almost $37 million in programs and services to support all of our immigrants and their families across the County of LA. Its programs include Represent LA, which provides immigration legal representation and services, and Link, services to support, services, capacity building, and case management for immigrant serving organizations and CBOs, and also by assisting in strengthening their language access to county-wide services. Additionally, the last Trump administration, the county updated the county code to prohibit the county workforce from cooperating with immigrant officials. The board also took decisive action to limit access to county-sensitive locations by law enforcement officers engaged in immigration enforcement. LA County, as you know, has proven it can act swiftly during times of crisis, as it did during the first Trump administration. Now, with the immigrant community facing another period of instability, the county has to act with the same urgency and resolve by strengthening our resources, expanding protections, and standing firm against harmful federal policies that the county knows can have a serious impact on our community. But that won't deter our commitment to supporting our immigrant communities. Today's motion reaffirms the county's prohibition on the use of any county resources for immigration enforcement purposes absent, and I want to underscore this, a judicial warrant. That was the same practice we had last time. And I was extremely pleased to hear that Sheriff Luna reiterated to the residents of LA County that the Sheriff's Department does not and will not engage in civil immigration enforcement, and that the department will continue its practice to not ask about immigration status when engaging with members of the public. The last thing we need in LA County is for residents to be scared to pick up the phone to report a crime to the LA Sheriff's Department, and we know that very well. We all know that many immigrants will continue to need access to legal representation. And that's why this motion before us today directs our CEO to assist us in identifying a minimum, and I say minimum, of $5.5 million of ongoing funding to continue supporting the existing Represent LA program that has been in operation. And let me be clear, 5.5 is just a baseline. I hope that the county can find more funding to grow this program. And as we know, as the demand of services is going to increase, and it already has. We've already seen it. I know my office has been receiving calls for assistance, nonprofits as well, church organizations, and people have been clamoring to get more information about legal representation. Represent LA, as we know, is a vital program that is meeting the needs of underrepresented immigrants in the county, providing due process and providing a fighting chance to prevent deportation for our most vulnerable residents. Since launching the program back in 2022, LA Represent has provided full scope and limited legal representation to about 5,075 individuals. The program has been a lifeline for so many who find themselves navigating such an uncertain immigration system. The motion calls on our CEO to work with DCBA to right-size the Office of Immigrant Affairs. Its time has come. OIA has accomplished a lot with a very small staff, and I want to commend them for that. But I think it's time to rethink, relook, reprogram, and plan ahead. The need for OIA services will only continue to grow over the next 4 years. There's no doubt in my mind. And we must ensure that it has the resources and capacity to serve effectively. And I think it's important for us to understand that we're not just talking about county departments, but other agencies and partners that work alongside with us. I'm pleased to say that LA Unified School District Superintendent is in support of this motion and wants to partner with us. The LA Community College District here in Los Angeles wants to partner. And I'm certain that there will be other large organizations that will also want to take part and be seated at the table with the county. In moments like this, leadership means stepping up for those who are most vulnerable. And I believe that passing this motion, we will be demonstrating our resolve to make LA County a welcoming place for all its residents, as it has done in the past. And I know that I can count on our CEO and our very capable staff to help us with planning how we can provide the representation as we move forward on a plan that will be inclusive of not just agencies and nonprofits, legal experts, departments, academicians, but to make sure that we truly are a large safety net for our immigrant communities. So with that, Madam Chair, I will turn it over to my co-author and respectfully ask you to vote aye. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Solis, for authoring this motion and for having me as your co-author. You have continued to be the champion and the rights protector of our immigrant community as long as I've known you. And appreciate this motion because we all witnessed the impact that the previous Trump administration had with its stricter regulations around public charge and other related policies aimed at our immigrant communities. The regulations had devastating impacts for our undocumented residents as well as those of mixed status household. It took time to reduce the fears and the confusion among our immigrant families about participating in programs and seeking services once those regulations had been scaled back by the Biden administration. And this motion serves to ensure that LA County continues to communicate and to educate our residents about their rights and the benefits that they are entitled to. Despite the changes taking place in Washington, D.C., we must remember that LA County is still home to over 220 cultures with over 240 unique spoken languages, which is why it is so important to continue our efforts in areas like language access and programs like the LA Justice Fund. It's truly important to include all relevant stakeholders in the proposed task force to ensure a cohesive message with clear information that can be shared with our residents. I look forward to continuing this work and doing everything we can to serve a vulnerable but very important population here in LA County. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Supervisor Solis. I appreciate you bringing this motion forward. I have a sneaky suspicion that this is the first of what will be many that will come forward as the new administration rolls out their ideas of what's best for making America great again or not. I know you were on the board the first time the former president was elected. I was in Sacramento at that time, and so it's, from my perspective, surreal to find ourselves in this position again. I am deeply proud to come from and represent a district with so many diverse immigrant communities. And I see and share their apprehension about what's coming, especially since the second district is home to more than a quarter of LA County's estimated 810,000 immigrant family, friends, and neighbors. And so as we roll into these uncertain times, it's clear to me that we'll need to remain nimble as different threats to our communities arise. We also have got to be clear-eyed about what levers we as a county have control over and those that we do not. Frighteningly, there are those that we will not. And how we, again, help our communities navigate the unknown beyond our reach and scope as a county. Supervisor Solis acknowledged that we are the safety net. And at CSAC last week, our statewide county affinity group, when I had the opportunity to address the body, I acknowledged that of the 58 counties, all of us signed up to be the provider of safety net services. And it appears to me that the safety net services are what's being targeted by the incoming administration. And so I am hoping, and I have full faith that LA County is going to do all that we can as exhibited in past practice, but I am certainly hoping that our brother and sister counties across this state acknowledge what percentage of our budgets come from federal sources and what we are going to do to continue to provide those important safety net services to every resident in our county. So again, we will recommit ourselves to doing what we can to protect all of our communities, including our immigrant family, friends, and neighbors. I too want to thank our county family members who have led this tireless work historically and have huge mountains to climb ahead of us, and we will be there in partnership. Thank you, Supervisor Solis.
Supervisor Barger.
Thank you. I just have a question. I know that this was formed in 2017 is when you brought in the motion the first time under that administration, but it's been ongoing since then. So with the 5.5 that's being requested that's going to run out at the end of this fiscal year, what have you been doing different from 2017 to today as it relates to services provided with this money?
Thank you for that question. And I'll defer to Rigo to go a little bit of the details into that. But the program has really evolved and scaled beyond just providing legal representation, but it's a direct connection to additional services and connections within our own department family and the entirety of the ecosystem that Representative LA has been fortifying through the investments from this county, the city, and philanthropy. So I'll defer to Rigo if you want to touch on a few of those things.
Thank you, Rafael. Rigo Reyes, Executive Director for the Office of Immigrant Affairs. Just a quick clarification. The $5.5 million is to fund the program in fiscal year 25-26.
No, I understand, but you've got money right now that's running out.
Yeah, that's
this fiscal
currently
year.
through June.
Correct.
Right. And some of the things that we've been doing strategically is building the capacity of the sector to be able to not only absorb these funds, but be more effective and really just have the capacity to respond to this greater need that we see happening. And that's been happening particularly over the last 2 years.
So, for example, when I was down, I walked Skid Row with Judge Carter, and as we speak, there are buses being brought up from the border, and women and children are being dropped off. And I talked to a man whose wife and 2 children were in a tent, and he wants to work, but he wants to do it by applying for a work visa, and a lawyer wanted to charge him over $1,000. And then another lawyer wanted to charge him $2,000, which he doesn't have. So would this money go toward helping individuals that want to get a work permit or work on paperwork toward being here in this country legally?
Absolutely. One section of the program is particularly focused on helping individuals with what we call affirmative type of support. We helped nearly 600 folks just in the last year in applying for employment authorization, navigating the system. So absolutely. And in addition to that, we have other programs that sync within this program, and particularly working with LASA, going to those shelters through a mobile unit that we are developing, and several other programs that provide the wraparound support for those individuals to fully integrate them into our community.
So I guess my question though is, the need has grown, as you said, and yet we're tying this to this new administration. What has changed over the last 3 years that has increased the need?
There was particularly an increase on the new immigrant arrivals that certainly impacted the number of unhoused individuals, and that forced us to sort of redirect some of our resources and focus. Now that particular issue, even with this current administration, they made some changes that changed those numbers at the border and those arriving. So now with this new situation that we are facing, perhaps fewer new arrivals, but there continues to be a large number of undocumented immigrants here in LA County that are going to need greater help.
So we're in crisis already, and yet we're tying any action we take to a new administration, is what I'm hearing. We've already got, I've seen what's going on in Skid Row. And the fact that, and I talked to them, by the way, and these families say their conditions on Skid Row are better than what they came from. So they are coming here for a better life. So I understand that, but I just want to be careful to frame this for what it is. We already have a serious crisis taking place right now as it relates to those that we're trying to find housing for. We just talked about the unhoused and the fact that we need to build more housing for those that are currently living on the streets that are unhoused. So I just think it's important that we not conflate the two. I just want to draw that out. And then on number 7, I just want to get a clarification. Coming on the heels of talking about contracting out and the covenant report, why are we waiving requirements of board policy number 5.100 for these agreements when, what is the purpose of having to waive that? Was that your request?
Yeah, I could definitely answer that. So part of that is so that we could be as responsive to the situations on the ground as we anticipate circumstances to be and dynamically evolving on the ground. So for example, we've already invested a significant amount of resources and funding through this board to establish the ecosystem that is Represent LA, that includes multiple CBOs that are participating and supporting this. We've had conversations with philanthropy and other partners that are potentially interested in providing additional resources and support through the exact same channels. So the delegated authority would allow us the flexibility to accept those funds and then redistribute them to the CBOs that are already doing this work.
So who can explain to me what board policy number 5.100 is?
Thank you, Supervisor. I thought that that was the county policy relating to sole source contracts when the contract is about to expire, and that the department that has the delegated authority is giving the board advance notice that they're going to basically re-up or extend the contract.
And was Covenant silence on sole source contracts, or did they point out issues surrounding awarding sole source contracts?
They certainly addressed sole source contracts as an issue of concern, for sure. They didn't say that they were inappropriate, but they were definitely raised as an issue of concern.
Okay, and so just to get a clarification, what you just said was that if you have a contract with ABC and it's set to expire, but you realize that ABC provides services that you need immediately, you would just extend their contract?
That and or if new funding materializes, say from an outside agency, either through a grant or through philanthropy, it allows us to amend the contracts and infuse the additional resources into the existing infrastructure.
I was just going to add, the normal practice, Supervisor, is if a department is going to do that, they'll give the board notice. It requires that the notice be given 6 months in advance, and usually there is a justification for it, like we won't have time to do a new solicitation because we've identified some, funding, and therefore we want to basically maintain the current contract in place.
So, and these are funds that possibly come in through the state and the feds that we apply for?
Likely it'll be state.
State.
We anticipate
Well,
that
I mean,
federal
yeah.
dollars might reduce, but
State
either
dollars.
state or philanthropy as well.
And what's the turnaround on the state? I mean, if we're applying for state funding, it doesn't happen overnight, does it? So
Yeah.
could you do a master contract where you vet, and then if the money becomes a realization? I mean, I just feel like we, on one hand, talk about the fact that we need to have a contracting process in place that is transparent and meets the standards that we just paid a lot of money to have someone tell us what we need to do, and then we're already kind of eroding away at it. And I have to believe there's a better way to do it, which gets back to how do we streamline the process as a whole and identify opportunities like that. I mean, to me, I would think that we could take the providers, because we know who the providers are that are probably providing most of these services.
Yes, 100% of the service.
And look at a standard contract that could be triggered if funding becomes available. I don't know. I just feel as though we've already started kind of. Everyone can justify why it should work for what they feel it should work for, but I think we need to hold ourselves accountable as it relates to sole source.
I absolutely agree. So this is a stopgap for the immediate needs right now. Our intent is to set up a master agreement, but a couple of things have been happening. And some of this was kind of touched on in some of the earlier conversations, is the capacity of some of our partners that are providing these services to actually work with county entities like us. We're the county, we're not so easy to work with. So we've been relying typically on those prime contractors that have higher capacity and internal capabilities on the accounting side to onboard subcontractors so that they could start building their capacity so that eventually they could get contracts on their own. That was part of the idea around our capacity building programming that was funded through ARP, is to start building this. And this program has really done that. We have over 20 partners that are part of the Represent LA program that at one point or not were so small that they didn't have any county contracts. They were typically operating off of grants, whether they're from philanthropy or money that they raise their own. So this is really building an ecosystem that we want to continue to maintain and continue to support.
Thank you. And last but not least, there are predators out there that are taking advantage of individuals like these attorneys that are charging fees that are completely outside of what the actual cost is. So I hope that you are going after the predators that are.
Solis?
Yes, Madam Chair, I wanted to ask OIA regarding the contract that was just questioned. I wanted to get clarification. How many years have we been working with those providers?
The current Represent LA launched in April of 2022. That's when we originally signed a contract with a lead administrator, and then that contractor signed contracts with a number of providers under their contract. So for the county, we actually have two contracts now. The one back in early 22, and then more recently, I think it was May, June of this year, a second contract where we split the original one, but the original one dates back to April of 2022.
And are most of the subcontractors folks, CBOs that we have worked with in the past?
Yes, they're all
So
the
they're
ones
well-known.
in the ecosystem, well-known.
Right.
As Director Carvajal mentioned, many of them weren't as strong as they are now due to the capacity building that in addition to the funding they get to provide these legal services through ARP funding, we were able to give them grants to build their infrastructure to do a better job for the communities they serve and to fulfill the responsibilities that for our contracts.
Just on another note, I want to thank some of the providers that may be in the audience as well, because I know that they are struggling, as you say, and we know it. They don't have a lot of funding opportunities. And during the past few years, as we did see an increase in migration from migrants coming from other states, like Texas, for example, and Arizona, that were taken from there and sent here to Skid Row, Union Station, and what have you. A lot of our CBOs took up the banter of helping them, even though they had limited resources, and including some of our providers in the homeless area. And yet there were some homeless providers who did not want to provide services because they felt that there would be jeopardized in terms of federal funding. So we did see some bias at that time, and it really was brought to our attention. So we felt it was important for us to reach out to CBOs that were doing in my mind, the right thing, helping anybody that was homeless. And if you were undocumented, you should not be turned away, especially children. And I still remain very committed to that. With respect to how our community is preyed upon, no doubt. We already see the commercials being shown on television about, come see me, I'm in your immigration law office here available to help you. And I, again, because of where you are in proximity to the Consumer and Business Affairs Office, I want to urge you to continue to do outreach to our community so that they know what avenues and things they need to be clear about. Because we have many false representation known as notarios that will say that they are lawyers, and they are not. And this board attempted to try to rectify that a few years ago, but that bill was vetoed in Sacramento. And it still remains a big issue, and now even more so, because of the language that's being used by the president-elect as well as his representatives that are going to be serving in his cabinet, Homeland Security, as well as his, I believe, second chief of staff, that are talking about mass deportations and opportunities where, if, for example, immigration enforcement officer is in an area and they just happen to identify other people that might be where that one person that they are targeting, because they know that they are out of legal status, will then also be able to pick up whoever is there around them. And if that person is at a work site and just didn't have their paperwork with them that day, they would also be a casualty of that. And we've seen that happen in workplaces and work sites. That's why we work so closely also with our labor partners, because we know that those things are coming and they've happened before. And I would just say that it's more incumbent on your offices as well as our other county departments that deal with families of mixed status. And they are varied. They are in DCFS, they are in probation, and they are also being served by DPSS. And so that's why I'm saying that when we think about this motion also and how we go forward in planning, that we involve those departments as well. And they may have opportunity to provide us with assistance, monetary or staff, that could be assigned just to help us with this as we deal with it. So those are my comments, Madam Chair.
Yeah, we have dozens of speakers. Supervisor Barger, I know you want to jump in.
You triggered my memory in terms of going into government offices. The families I met, which by the way came from San Diego, they did not come from Texas. The families I talked to, 5, were brought up here because San Diego could not accommodate them down there. And the reason why they ended up in tents is because they didn't, for the 15-year-old, she didn't want to be separated from her family. And that is a struggle we all have, and I know you've worked on it, getting more housing for families so we don't separate families. So, I just want to make it clear that these individuals, according to the court monitor, were told to go into an office to get help, and they were not going to go. They will not go where they don't understand what the ramifications are. And so outreach is really the only way you're going to get to a lot of these families, individuals, because asking them to go to a brick and mortar, even if it's a nonprofit, and in this case it was Churla, they were apprehensive. Not even apprehensive, they weren't going to do it. Either they'd lose their location for their tent, or their tent entirely, or they were afraid that they would be arrested. So I think it's important for us to be cognizant of the fact that outreach is probably, for a lot of these individuals, the only way you're going to get them the resources, in this case a work permit, so that they can get off the streets, because that's really what he wanted. That was his frustration. He wants to provide for his family, and came up here to do it, but wants to get a permit in order to do it in a way that's going to be legal. So, thank you.
Executive Officer, please call the members of the public who signed up to speak on this item.
Alejandro Castro, Alvaro Huerta, Andrea Gonzalez, Antonio Dominguez, Beatriz Sandoval, Berta Gonzalez, Byron Jose, Carlos Amador, Cristina Sandoval, Connie Chung Jo, Diego Rodriguez, Diego Cartagena, Diamond Cruz, Donald Harlan, Dr. Critical Truth Bay, and Edith Aguilar. Please come forward and staff will assist you. Moderator, may we have the first remote speaker, please?
Our first participant is Orlando Leon. Your line is open. If you're muted, please unmute. Speak directly to your phone. You may begin.
I think, as they mentioned, the crisis has been going on and has been exacerbated over the last few years, and especially now. I think hearing the County Committee members with a lot of uncertainty, a lot of people in the process of doing the things the legal way and getting their stuff ready. People want to work, people want to just live in peace and thrive in this country. A lot of people come from marginalized communities, and now it seems like they're going to be marginalized in this country as well. So I think people just need to have the proper resources to not have fear and to have adequate services that can help them thrive in this country and have their freedom to prosper. And
Time expired. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Adele Andrade. Your line is open. Please unmute if you're muted and speak directly to your phone. You may begin.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chair Horvath, Honorable Board of Supervisors. My name is Adele Andrade Stadler, and I am the councilwoman for the city of Alhambra. Last week we had our emergency meeting and voted to emergency action to support and reaffirm Senate Bill 54, which is the California Values Act. I'm also the executive director of the Voices of Immigrant Students of Alhambra. I stand before you because as leaders in local government, we unequivocally reaffirm our commitment to supporting all immigrants in our communities. A relationship of trust between immigrants and local agencies, including law enforcement and first responders, schools, hospitals, is essential in carrying out our basic functions of our community and ensuring all our residents feel safe and healthy and have access to the resources which this motion will bring to help our community create a better place for all. In addition, next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Celia Valdez. Your line is open. One moment. Okay, your line is open now. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly to your phone.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Celia Valdez. I'm with Maternal and Child Health Access. I'm here on behalf of 17 other organizations, Choice, Partners, Community Health Outreach Initiative Partners, here to express our support for this motion. We have over 20 years of experience in community outreach, education, and healthcare navigation, and we are ready to stand with and support immigrants, ensuring that they have continued access to health coverage and benefit programs, helping them enroll, utilize their benefits, and remain covered, and most importantly, help them to access to address any eligibility or access to care issues that they may be facing, and easing the public charge fears, helping them create profit and loss statements and income affidavits so they have no other way of proving their income, and provide ongoing support to ensure that they are getting the help that they need. We work with all programs, including Medical Covered California, specifically for DOCA, and the new Kaiser Community Health Program. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Fernando Rodriguez. Your line is open. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly to your phone. You may begin.
Good afternoon. I'm here on behalf of Burges Communities, formerly known as Community Health Council, and we stand in support of the motion. We stand ready to support and assist immigrants as we have over the last 20 years, well, especially most recently with renewals and expansions for immigrants. We speak the languages of the communities we serve and our trusted partners. We do more than health coverage applications. We help fix problems with food and housing insecurity, employment, transportation, and much more. But we need funds. Most of us have had to lay off and are facing another cliff at the beginning of the next year. The program is a bargain. Please consider our workforce for support for this immigrant initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Raymond Andre. Your line is open. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly to your phone. You may begin.
Hello, my name is Dr. Raymond Andre. I'm the superintendent of the Mountain View School District, serving the Monte and South of Monte communities. I want to thank Supervisor Solis for bringing a motion forward to support immigrants in our communities. There's nothing worse than having children in school fearful of what's going to happen to their families. The recent presidential election has provoked fear and anxiety in our immigrant communities, and the same swift action that was taken in 2017, I appreciate that from Los Angeles County for looking at taking that again. Please support programs that support our children and our families, because all of our residents are entitled to and need a quality life, and children cannot learn if that doesn't happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Brenda Olivis. Your line is open. Please unmute if you're muted and speak directly to your phone. You may begin.
Yes, hi, good morning. Good afternoon. My name is Brenda Olivis, and I'm calling on behalf of Spirit Family Services. And we serve over 12,000 individuals who are predominantly Spanish-speaking. Our mission is to empower families, improve health and well-being, and strengthen communities through mental and behavioral health programs and address trauma, child maltreatment, and intimate partner violence. We're here to support Supervisor Hilda Solis for her motion to increase support for the immigrant community in Los Angeles County. We urge the board to vote yes on item 8, and please support it. So don't give up, guys. We got this. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Elizabeth Green. Your line is open. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly to your phone. You may begin.
Clinics cannot assist patients who are tortured in the U.S. because their federal funding creates a conflict of interest. Therefore, we need published empirical evidence of the efficacy of amnesty and post-torture treatment. We need data and results obtained through clinical trials. Employment for everyone includes clinical trials wherein immigration policy allows all immigrants preserves privacy by transmitting encrypted packets containing health data from the wearer to the clinic. I testify that immigrants took away from me a job, an apartment, food, and government services. Immigrants have unhoused and unemployed me. Immigrants repeatedly used threat of force to force labor as they did other U.S.-born citizens, including the tongues of people before me. Immigrants have told me to game the system like they do. The average lifespan is decreasing in the U.S. Immigrants need to start supporting every U.S.-born citizen who could die of overcrowding or disease from their invasion. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Diana Zhao. Your line is open. Please unmute if you're muted. Speak directly to your phone. You may begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Diana Zhao. I'm with Win-Win. I'm the CEO for Win-Win Relationship Learning Center. My staff and myself provide educational services such as like DV, domestic violence, anger management, or parenting classes to facilitate with people's behavior change. I really want to thank Supervisor Solis for her motion to increase the support for the immigrant community in LA County. But I'm an immigrant myself. Before I became a naturalized American citizen, I have, all the support from the American society. But now it's time to give back, and I fully support that, we need to work together to contribute something for our immigrants. The recent presidential election has provoked fear and anxiety among the immigrant community. I believe that only through working together and, through the programs such as Represent LA can provide critical services for immigrants as needed.
Our next participant is Preven. Your line is open. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly to your phone. You may begin.
Thank you. It's Preven. I live in formerly the 3rd district, but now they moved me into the 5th district because they didn't appreciate me. But thank you for this. This is a lot of people in our world are afraid at the moment. It would have been helpful to have a little bit of a kind of a as the city council they discussed what's happening, and of course the service providers. But the police officers also were explaining they're not going to get involved in ICE and DHS activities. That's not their purview, their role. This is Los Angeles, obviously a city that is built on immigrants and people from all over the world. So that's great. The only thing I'm concerned about is the immigrants were listening to the homeless presentation. And they really want the county handling this because the county has been so, and my heart goes out to the many staffers and the teams that are trying. And this does feel like maybe we're in a moment where there'll be a little reform. But if I were to be very wary of the services provided by the county, given probation.
Our next participant is Cindy Oliver. Your line is open. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Cindy Oliver, and I am speaking on behalf of Pastor Brown at PCS Family Services. We're a community-based organization located in Pomona. PCS offers various free services to communities within the Pomona Valley and its surrounding cities. We want to thank Supervisor Hilda Solis for her motion to increase support for the immigrant community in LA County, and we urge the board to vote yes on item 8. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. We're now going to go to speakers in person. Please go ahead. Oh, let's make sure her mic's on. Hold on just a second. It's still not on?
I'm not alone.
There she is.
I got beautiful young ladies and older ladies, and we do need a house for the older community.
Your question has been withdrawn. To alert the speaker that you have a question, press 1, 0.
But you are in queue. We have migrants up here. I know you do. Miss Sully, I know you come from migrant background, and we all do. Africans, like what Martin Luther King said, let's make a dream come true. Let's build Los Angeles what it used to be. We have to overpower. We have a president coming in, I know he's crazy, but it's okay to be crazy. Los Angeles is more crazier because we get things done. And I know y'all got the overhand, y'all can vote on it, y'all get things done, and I hope y'all can do it because you got some beautiful transgenders that need homes, that need things, and we're here here first, older ladies like me, and I'm gonna continue coming back to say what I gotta say. Love y'all.
We have a lot of speakers here, so if you are in support, please indicate so by doing this.
Elizabeth Hercules, Felipe Calzada, Jessica Martinez, Joanna Rodriguez, Julissa Hernandez, Kimberly Cooks, and Lena Mumtaz. Please come forward and staff will assist you. Moderator, may we have the next speaker, please?
Our next participant is Ricky Garcia. Your line is open. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ricky Garcia. I'm with El Proyecto del Barrio, which for the last 50 years has provided health and human services in our communities with underserved populations, regardless of immigration status. I want to thank Supervisor Solis for her motion to increase the support of the immigrant community in LA County. And as the supervisor mentioned, immigrants really contribute significantly to our economy and cultural diversity. We want to urge the board to vote yes on item number 8 and continue to support and protect our immigrant residents. Fund these programs to meet the anticipated increase in demands and provide the safety net that we know we are and have always been. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Our next participant is Jason Bautista. Your line is open. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Hello, my name is Jason Bautista. I'm with the Thai Community Development Center, or Thai CC, based in East Hollywood, Thai Town. Thai CC is a nonprofit organization that addresses the needs of Thais and other disadvantaged immigrants. We engage in community economic development, immigrant worker rights, human rights advocacy, food justice, healthcare access, and a provision of social and legal services. I want to thank Supervisor Solis for her motion to increase support for the immigrant community in Los Angeles County.
Next speaker, please. We lost our speaker. Was his comment complete?
We'll try to find him and get him back. We'll go to the next one in the meantime.
When he comes back, he has 30 seconds. Next speaker.
Understood. Our next participant is Claudia Bautista. Your line is open. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Claudia Bautista with the Pomona Economic Opportunity Center. We work with day laborers, domestic workers, and other low-wage workers in Pomona and eastern Los Angeles County. I wanted to call to be in support of Motion 8. Immigrants are an important part of LA County and Southern California overall, and we need to make sure that LA County shows leadership to the rest of the country, letting them know that we will stand with immigrants, especially continuing to support and represent LA. Immigrants are LA, and any other work that is being done to make sure that the quality of life of immigrants continues to be better here in the county. Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker.
Our next participant is, we're going to bring Jason Bautista back in to finish his comment. Mr. Bautista, your line is once again open. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Jason Bautista. I'm with the Thai Community Development Center, or Thai CEC. I want to thank Supervisor Solis for her motion to increase support for the immigrant community in Los Angeles County. Programs like Represent LA provide critical services to many immigrants in our community, and we urge the board to vote yes on item 8. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Our next participant is Rubiana English. Your line is open. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Viviana English. I want to thank Supervisor Linda Solis for her motion to increase support of the immigrant community in LA County. We urge the board to vote yes on item 8. Immigration strengthens the U.S. economy and it contributes to a greater prosperity for all Americans. The U.S. was built on immigrants, and we appreciate all the efforts that are being made to protect immigrant residents in LA. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. And our next participant is Scarlett Peralta. Your line is open. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Scarlett, are you there? Hi, yes, thank you very much. My name is Scarlett Peralta, and I serve as mayor of Montebello. I also want to share that I am a proud immigrant who came to this country from Mexico when I was just 2 years old. Growing up undocumented shaped my life profoundly. It gave me a deep understanding of the challenges immigrants face as well as the resilience that we demonstrate every day. I do want to thank Supervisor Hilda Solis for her unwavering leadership in introducing this motion to support increased support for the Los Angeles County immigrant community. Immigrants like my family contribute immensely to our community, culture, and social fabric, but we also know the fear and uncertainty that federal policies can create in our communities. The California Values Act is essential to ensuring that no one in our community has to live in fear when accessing schools, hospitals, and courthouses. Programs like Represent LA are lifelines for families navigating complex legal systems, especially as federal policies become increasingly costly. As someone who benefited from community support, I do urge the board to fully fund Represent LA and continue prioritizing.
Next speaker, please. Our next participant is Ronald Gonzalez. Your line is open. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and honorable members of the Board of Supervisors. I'm Ronald Gonzalez Lawrence with Pomona Unified School District Superintendent's Office. Pomona Unified serves 20,000 students and families in the east end of LA County in Pomona and Diamond Bar. At POSD, we also serve a large immigrant population and who are experiencing fear and are apprehensive at this moment. I want to thank Supervisor Solis for her motion to increase support to this community. It is absolutely critical that the county fund programs like Represent LA to meet the anticipated increased demand for services. On behalf of Pomona Unified School District Superintendent Darrell Knowles, we urge the board to vote yes on item 8. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Our next participant is Dr. Mary Maisel. Your line is open. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Hi, this is Dr. Mary Maisel. I'm with the Los Angeles County Medical Center Child Abuse Clinics. I would like to thank Supervisor Hilda Solis for her motion to increase support for the immigrant community in our Los Angeles County. We deal with a very large immigrant population, and I can tell you that this really is a humanitarian effort. Like when we support the immigrants, we're not only helping them succeed, but we're helping our country succeed. There's been numerous studies that show that immigration fuels our economy. When immigrants enter the labor force, they increase the productive capacity of the whole country, even our city, and raise the GDP. I also would like to thank Hilda Solis because she's been such a huge proponent of helping our clinic in decreasing child abuse. And programs like she started just, again, are a humanitarian effort and just promote our culture and our economy. And I urge the Board of Supervisors to vote yes on item 8 and remember that it's a humanitarian effort. And our greatest diversity as a city and our country lies in our immigrant population. Thank you so very much. Sorry. Bye-bye.
Our next participant is Carla Lopez. Your line is open. Please unmute if you're muted and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Carla, are you there?
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Cara Lopez Valdez. I am calling in support of the Immigrant to Our Los Angeles Coalition. I am with Para Los Niños, where for nearly 45 years, we have served and partnered with over 10,000 children, youth, and their families through integrated wellness and support to address individual and systemic barriers to create pathways to success. This is done across LA County. Para Los Niños is here to support the motion, increasing support for LA County immigrants. We truly thank Supervisor Solis for this motion and exploring how the county can support immigrant communities under a second Trump administration. This is such a critical time to increase capacity and resources to address the urgent and growing needs of immigrant communities across the county to ensure they can thrive. Thank you for your time and attention to this motion. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Our next participant is Lynn Kersey. Your line is open. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Thank you very much. My name is Lynn Kersey. I'm with Maternal and Child Health Access, and I want to thank you for and support the leadership that this motion illustrates. We work with families and individuals of all ages, but especially immigrants in the downtown Los Angeles area, and with many of the coalitions and groups that are speaking here today. I want to support the idea that outreach is critical. We help find people who don't know about services, who don't know what's available. Recently, a young mother and child sleeping in the park, and watch as their communities, their immigrant communities, step up with the little they have and say, sleep in my house, sleep in my bedrooms, in our one-bedroom or studio apartment, risking eviction themselves for doing so. All we want is to be able to assist with the benefits that our state and county allows for people, the groceries from ARPA, the Spanish literacy programs that our organization provides. But navigators were cut, state health navigators were cut last year in the budget with 6 weeks' notice, and many groups have had to lay people off. Thank you very much for your motion. Please vote on yes on 8. Thank you.
Our next participant is Roy Humphreys. Your line is open. If you're muted, please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Okay, your disingenuous presentation is appalling. 8 U.S. 13, 25, 24, 24A. You are, in fact, felons, should be in federal penitentiary. Using children as a shield is shameful. You're a pathetic example. You are a pathetic example for the youth. President Trump has told that 12 to the 20 million Biden-Harris illegals will be the first ones to go and shut down the border. To spend $1 on illegals while citizens go homeless in Rowland Heights and live on our streets is a crime. The county, state, and the United States government are structurally bankrupt, and you want to exacerbate this transparency. And as to Barack Obama, I refer you to Dr. Thomas Sowell for starters. Thank you.
We're now going to speakers in person. Please go ahead.
Muy buenas tardes,